Buddhism. 500 years before Jesus was born, a young prince named Siddhartha Gautama was born in the country we now call Nepal. Siddhartha was raised as a Hindu. He raised the great writing of Hinduism and practiced Hinduism rituals. Day when he went out among his people, he was greatly disturbed by four sights. A very old man, a very sick man, a man who had just died, and a wandering monk or holy man. The first three sights sorrowed the young prince. He wondered, why do people grow old? Why do they get sick? Why do they suffer and die? Siddhartha decided that he should become a monk himself so that he could go into the world and search for answers to his questions. Siddhartha took off his royal garments and put on a faded orange robe. He shaved his hair and his beard, then he left his palace forever and set out in search of wisdom. Siddhartha wandered for 6 years. Then one night, when the moon was full, he stopped to rest under a fig tree. He vowed not to move until he had found answers to his questions. Siddhartha sat in a cross-like position. He closed his eyes and began practicing a form of yoga meditation. He concentrated on the great Hindu teachings. He thought about the endless cycle of death and rebirth. He thought about human pain and suffering. During his meditation, Siddhartha had a revelation, a sudden divine understanding that explained everything to him. He understood that people could find an end to suffering, to followers of Buddhism, his new and powerful sight is. Known as the Enlightenment. When it happens to Siddhartha, he became known as the Buddha. The Buddha believed that other people could achieve enlightenment as well, but before they did, they had to free themselves from all their worldly desires, such as the desire for richness, for a good job, for a wife, or a husband. This special freedom is known as detachment. The Buddha's understanding of suffering and detachment is called Dharma. Dharma represents all the teachings of Buddhism. The basic message of Buddha's teaching is summed up in four noble truths. They were clear and simple. All lives are filled with suffering. Suffering comes from a desire of worldly things. Suffering ends when desire ends. People can learn to end desire by following 8 rules. The 8 rules, known as the Noble's Eightfold Path, are right understanding, beware the Buddha's teaching, the right intentions, try to follow these teachings wholeheartedly, right speech, say nothing to harm others, right actions, do nothing to harm any living creature, right livelihood, choose a job that hurts no living thing, right effort, strive to become a good person, right full-mindedness, learn to control all your thoughts and emotions in order to quiet your mind. Right concentration, practice the deep meditation which leads to the high state of enlightenment known as nirvana. Nirvana is something that happens when one is completely released from suffering. It is so different from everyday life that Buddhists believe it cannot be described. For 45 years, the Buddha walked all over the land, teaching people how to find enlightenment. As he taught, a new religion grew around him. This religion was different from Hinduism in several ways. The Buddha taught the following: the Noble and Eightfold Path could be done without the long facts and difficult yoga practices of Hindu. holy men and women. This less difficult path became known as the Middle Way. Another system, and he did not believe in worshipping the many Hindu gods and goddesses according to the one legend. Someone once asked him if he were God. No, he said, you are not a saint. No, what are you then? I'm awake, he said. This is one meaning of the name Buddha, the awakened one who was finally woken up to the truth. At the age of 80, the Buddha died from food poisoning. After his death, his followers saved some of his bones and teeth. As relics, sacred religion objects believed that his power still resided in them. Special structures called stupas were built to house the relics. Today there are thousands of stupas throughout Asia because there are limited number of relics. Most stupas house sacred writings and images instead. Since the Buddha's death, countless images of him have been erased inside temples and at outdoor shrines. These statues and images give worshippers a sense of Buddha's loving presence. All right, see you, Lilith. The Buddha organized his followers into a holy community of monks and nuns, men and women who devoted their entire lives to their religion. For centuries after his death, monks and nuns kept Buddhism alive. They inscribed the Buddha's wisdom on palm leaves and stored the leaves in baskets. Eventually, these writings became part of a huge collection of Buddhist scriptures. Buddhist monks and nuns spread the word about the Buddhist teaching, and today there were more than 300 million Buddhists in the world, making Buddhism the world's fourth largest religion. As Buddhism spread from its origins in India, it split into two different groups: Theravada Buddhism, which is spread mainly in Southeast Asia, and Mahayana Buddhism, which is typically mainly in Central and East Asia. Mahayana Buddhism is also spread to Europe and North America. Theravada Buddhism teaches that monks called arhats are the perfect models of Buddhism. Their poverty and simplicity free them to spread their time meditating, speaking personal enlightenment. The monks wear saffron robes much like the one that the Buddha wore. They shave their heads as the Buddha did. They never marry. They sleep in simple dwellings called monasteries. They do not worry about making money but depend on others to feed them. Every day they carry their begging bowls from house to house, and people give them food in return. The monks give spiritual guidance to the community. In Theravada countries, young men who often worship by becoming monks temporarily during the rainy season when there is little farm work. They shave their 4 or 5 sometimes, don the robes of a monk, and spend the night in a monastery alone, as Prince Siddhartha did. Mahayana Buddhists, on the other hand, empathized that people should help one another achieve nirvana. They teach that since we another, the beggar in the streets might have been your mom in the past life. To help the beggar, the criminal, and all others who are suffering. And Mahayana Buddhist men and women who have achieved enlightenment are called bodhisattvas. They delay entering nirvana until they can help others do the same. Within Mahayana Buddhism are a number of different groups, such as Vajrayana Buddhism, Zen Buddhism, and Pure Land Buddhism. Wow, that's a mouthful. Vajrayana Buddhism is practiced in Central Asia. Its followers believe that the more a prayer is repeated, the more powerful it becomes. A prayer can be written out 1,000 of times and spun into a spiral object called a prayer wheel. The prayer wheel repeats the prayer as it turns in the wind. A popular form of modern Buddhism is Zen, which began in China and spread to Korea and Japan. Zen Buddhism centers on meditation. Meditators are expected to sit with their eyes closed and count each breath without thinking about other things. This sounds simple, but the mind is so restless that students often work a long time before they can successfully meditate. Zen can seem like a puzzling religion. Zen monks sometimes ask their students odd questions such as, what is the sound of one hand clapping? A riddle like this is called a koan. It is supposed to help students think and see things in a new way. The most common form of Buddhism in Japan is Pure Land Buddhism. Followers primarily worship the Amida Buddha, the Buddha of boundless light. They believe that faith in Amida will lead to their rebirth in paradise known as the Pure Land. Hi, Sky Sport. Many Japanese Buddhism also practice another ancient religion of Shinto. Shinto teaches that divine forces live in all things that inspire awe and wonder, such as a waterfall, a whirlpool, a mysterious cave, a beautiful stone, an exquisite insect, the wind and rain, thunder and lightning, and even a fascinating person. Japanese Buddhists sometimes worship at Shinto's shrines as well as a Buddhist temple. And religious festivals throughout the Japan year involve a combination of Shinto Buddhism and Confucian practices. One important Buddhist festival takes place each year on the first full moon of May. It is the celebration of the Buddha's birthday in Southern Asia countries. The day is marked by candlelit processions. In Japan, children carry lotus flowers and pour tea over their heads of an image of the infant Buddha. The lotus flower is an important symbol of Buddhists and nature. The lotus grows in shallow waters. It flowers emerging from the mud. In the same way, Buddhism teaches that purity can rise out of the world, suffering and bloom in the sun. Flowers of Buddhism meditate before sacred images of the Buddha kept in temples. The time of the services may vary in some countries. Services are held 4 times a month at the 4 main phases of the moon. In other countries, public worship takes place every Sunday. Normally, Buddhists may worship in a temple at any time. They first remove their shoes, then enter the temple and bow before an image of the Buddha. They offer gifts and flowers, food or candles, then they sit on the floor and pray or meditate. in a peaceful atmosphere. Buddhists also meditate before a simple shrine in their home, at home as in the temple. Sweet-smelling incense candles are burning before a statue of the Buddha. The candlelight represents the Buddha's wisdom giving light to the world. As a Buddhist bowl, each morning before the flickering flame, he or she might recite a common Buddhist prayer. May all beings be free from sorrow.